How to best prepare yourself for the coming financial crisis. Many financial analysts believe the United States economy is in a dire situation. Peter Schiff, who accurately predicted the 2008 recession, has come out and declared we will all live through another Great Depression, only this time, it'll be much worse than before. But there are ways to prepare for such an event, and we've gathered some helpful tips and tricks to help make the process a little more smooth. The bad news is, we are going to live through another Great Depression, and it's going to be very different. This will be in many ways, much worse than what people had to endure during the Great Depression. This is going to be a dollar crisis. When you are talking about the magnitude of the debt we have, that extra money raising interest rates is big. That's going to be a big drain on the economy to the extent that we have to pay higher interest to international creditors. A lot of this phony GDP is coming from consumption, while the average American who is consuming is deeply in debt, and they are going to impact it dramatically in the increase in the cost of servicing that debt. Given how much debt we have, and how much debt is going to be marketed, the massive increase in supply will argue for interest rates that are higher. Peter Schiff, according to Financial Times, it is becoming clear that the global monetary policy is now caught in a debt trap of its own making. Continuing on the current monetary path is ineffective and increasingly dangerous. But any reversal also involves great risks. It stands to reason that the odds of another crisis blowing up continue to rise. So how can you forecast this economic disaster and best prepare? For starters, you should pay off as much debt as possible. There are many reasons for this, the obvious being if it truly belongs to you and you have the title in hand, no one can take that property from you. Pay off your unsecured debts first and as quickly as possible, however. Credit card debt will become more expensive as interest rates rise, making those already only able to make a minimum payment stuck choosing between a credit card payment or another bill. Make sure you stop putting things on a credit card in order to pay it down with the goal of eliminating that debt. Cut things out of your budget if you must to pay things off. A good tip from Surveyopedia is to tackle your debts one at a time, starting with the smaller ones. Once the smaller one is paid off, apply the money for those payments to the next biggest debt, paying it off early. Once things are paid off, you'll also have the added benefit of having extra money to buy things of value that can be used as currency during a crisis, such as gold, food, or ammunition. Remember, when paper money is of no value, food or ammunition could very well be a powerful form of currency, as bartering for goods and services inevitably returns. Everyone knows they should store a little extra food just in case, even if it's only to wait out a harsh storm. But accumulating ammunition is a great way to prepare for a post-apocalyptic world, especially one in which no one has money or money is worthless and grocery store shelves are empty. This is a great primer article to learn more about SHTF firearms. Rifle and pistol cartridges will always have value if you store them right, because ammunition could mean the difference between life and death. An unloaded gun is merely a club, while a loaded gun can kill an animal for meat or protect one's life from a violent attack. Hoarding ammunition and having a safe and dry place to store it could be almost seen as a savings account. Even if you don't own a gun capable of shooting a cartridge you are storing, someone else likely will. One strategy to use, though, is to arm yourself with firearms and ammunition using very common cartridges. This will increase the chances that someone else will have a gun that can shoot what you are offering. The most common pistol cartridges are 9mm, 38 Special, and .45 ACP. The most common rifle cartridges are .22 Long Rifle, 7.62x 39mm, and 5.56x 45mm. Ammunition is often overlooked as a possible form of currency during a financial crisis, but it will be necessary and difficult to come by making it a highly valued currency. Make sure you have a safe place to store your ammunition and keep its availability quiet to prevent theft or violent attacks against yourself. Rifle cartridges will represent months' worth of food, even if you don't own a rifle. The trick is to find someone who doesn't trade them for something of equal value. The final tip to best prepare yourself for a financial crisis is to learn how to make things, such as biodiesel or vegetable oil. Vegetable oil can be extracted by the proper processing of corn and other seeds of your choice, and during Venezuela's collapse, this was one of the first staples that disappeared from the market. Most of the oil-producing companies were seized and nationalized. Now their production is a small fraction of what it was when they were private, and the military controls the supply and sales in the black market. Once the vegetable oil has been used for cooking, it could be used as fuel, to improve the heat output of wood stoves, or even as a makeshift water heater that runs with waste vegetable oil. But you should also consider learning to make biodiesel, especially if you own a vehicle or a generator that will run on diesel fuel. It is possible to make biodiesel using vegetable oil too. If you'd like to try it, ThoughtCo has put together a helpful guide that will walk you through the process. Remember the 3 things that will be the most impactful during an economic collapse: having no debt, having items that will serve as a currency, and being able to produce things of value. If you can accomplish all of those, your chances of survival will go up. After the fall, what happens after the next economic collapse? The financial status of the US is concerning and things aren't looking too good. But you already knew that. The economy in 2016 can be best described as a comatose man who is barely hanging on for his life. But you most probably knew that too. What you may not have known is why things have gotten in this deplorable and tragic state. This is because of poor management before and after the worldwide economic collapse in 2008. Recovery would have been difficult, but not impossible. But a series of mistakes blew everything to pieces. In the present day, the US is finding itself in a debt that's worth trillions of dollars. The main problem is that this amount is growing uncontrollably every second, and we will continue to pile up trillions upon trillions of national debt until the external creditors will cut us off from the source. This will kill off instantly everything that has to do with the financial system. But most of all, the upcoming economic collapse will affect most of all the average American that's used to working for a living. Since 2010, millions of Americans have lost their jobs as many industries collapsed under the crushing weight of an unscrupulous economy which seemed to take much more than it would give. And the decimation of the middle class is still continuing, as more and more Americans seem to find it harder with each passing day to find a steady job, get credit, or even put some money on the side. We've been promised salvation, but it seems that there's nobody here to deliver it. Things have been going from bad to worse apparently. And this is mainly caused by the economic collapse that has destabilized, most likely beyond repair, our already fragile economy, the hyperinflation of the US dollar, and the poor management of the national debt. If the economy fails again, it would be for the last and final time. It would be like firing a bullet directly in the head of a comatose man. His chances of survival are astronomically slim. If this happens, chaos will ensue. It's important to know what we'll be dealing with in order or to cope as best as we can with the sudden shift in modern society. Food and water will become a commodity in the first stage of the final economic collapse. Inflation will take hold on everything. The food industries will become less and less efficient and will eventually shut down, of course. But before that happens, food prices will skyrocket. Even the cheapest products will become so expensive that most members of the population just won't be able to afford food anymore. And as time passes by, things will gradually worsen. If the inflation is aggressive and gets out of hand, marginal business will shut down in record time. Riots will happen like clockwork. Hungry and unhappy people can't be contained for long and will riot every chance they get. They will be the first target of the military, if martial law is declared. People will panic and will go on rampages, and their actions will bring chaos and anarchy. Jobs will be lost, and so will houses and material possessions. And to be frank, nobody's really safe, not even those who seem to be doing well for themselves at the present. As the middle class continues to deteriorate, it will feed more and more soldiers for the anti-establishment riots. Many will form separate groups, similar to clans, who will revert to a primitive state of being, fending only for themselves and preying on whatever it is they can find in order to survive. Martial law is a frightening yet real possibility as the fibers of society will gradually break down. The average Americans will begin to manifest their discontent through all sorts of protests, legal or not. In order to maintain as much of the order as possible, the state will declare martial law as a means of self-preservation. The U.S. has already made preparation for such an occasion with the passing of the 2012 NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act. When martial law is installed, pretty much every social right the Americans hold will go out the window. The NDAA suspends habeas corpus once to be brought before a judge or court, especially for investigation of a restraint of the person's liberty, and installs indefinite detention, but also allows assumption that any citizen or resident may be considered an enemy combatant. The Miranda rights will be cancelled and any possible action that displeases the military and the leaders will be met with force. The government can close the borders in order to maintain its state of power. The government will try to contain the population. The right to travel freely, both nationally and internationally, will be revoked as soon as the government finds it harder and harder to deal with the anti-establishment rebels that will emerge. In order to keep the people in check, passports will be suspended, thus eliminating the possibility of them regrouping and planning a coup d'état outside of the reach of the secret services and military. Traveling within the confines of the country will also be restricted a whole lot, by establishing checkpoints and indoor customs. Living in such conditions won't be easy. Nothing you can do to stop the ship from going under, but there's plenty you can do to prepare so that you don't end up going down with it. The best way to anticipate the anarchy that will be brought upon America is to start preparing for the inevitable upcoming economic collapse. Make all the necessary provisions and learn to sleep with one eye open. Cause when the SHTF, you might find yourself in an every man for himself situation and nobody to count on but yourself.